everyone, this is Rhiannon Payne, Marketing Director at Ruby Central, and I am here today with Joe Masilotti. Joe attended RailsConf last month and was inspired to build an incredible new app that is really taking the Ruby community by storm right now, called Ruby Friends. And if you haven't heard of it yet, you have now. Excited to hear from Joe about what inspired this journey and also what his future plans are. So, Joe, it's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat a little bit about RailsConf and Ruby Friends in particular.
Yeah, absolutely. So before we get into that, tell us a little bit more about your journey with Ruby and Rails.
I got started with Rails 10, 12 years ago or something when I was working at a consulting agency with pair programming and stuff. I didn't know Rails at all and got thrown right into it. I was an iOS developer at the time and have slowly shifted back into that role of doing iOS and Android, but with the Rails slant of Hotwire Native. So it's been cool to see both of my kind of past worlds collide in this way that I never would have expected with like hybrid apps and still writing mostly Rails these days, but I have that existing iOS and Android knowledge that I can bring in, which I thought I'd have to leave behind. Now I can use forever, which is really fun.
That's awesome. And you did tell me before we started recording that you actually released the Android version of Ruby Friends today.
Yeah, that's right. So it's a desktop, mobile web, and then a native iOS and Android app, both powered by Hotwire Native.
That's incredible. So you've moved really quickly on this. As we're recording today, it's August 12th, which is almost exactly a month since RailsConf. So we
Yeah.
now have Ruby Friends, as you said, on web, iOS, Android. How on earth have you made so much progress on this so quickly, and what inspired it?
Yeah, I'll start with the second question first. The big inspiration for this was that as I was going around RailsConf, everyone had a little QR code on their badge, which I thought was this really interesting way of learning more about someone. When you scanned the QR code, the weird part was that it opened up your address book to add that person's phone number or email address to your contacts. And the first time I scanned a code, I was a little thrown off. It was like a little too much almost. I just met this person 5 minutes ago. I don't really want their phone number. Like maybe their email address. But what I really want is like to remember your name, maybe your picture, and one of your social media platforms or something. Like I want to follow you on Twitter. That's like about check out your repos on GitHub. And I added that person to my contact book and moved on with it. And I got to the hotel and was like, I think there's something there. Like, why can't I just build a website that makes a better QR code, essentially? It links to a better spot where you can have your Ruby profile, something that has your picture that you choose, that has a little sentence about yourself. Hey, talk to me about these three things. These are really good conversation starters. And then opt into what you share. Here's a link to my email address if you want to share it or not. So that was the original, let's just make a website. QR codes can be scanned by a camera and just go on the website. And then as I started building it, I was like, wait a minute, this is a really good opportunity to create a Hotwire native app because there's a lot of features that can only work on native apps. And the big one there was the QR code scanning directly in the app, which is pretty fun. Push notifications when someone says, hey, I met you at this conference. And then also this NFC stuff that I've been playing around with and is now live on iOS. So I have these little blank,
Oh,
they're just credit
cool.
card sized
Yeah,
black credit cards. I don't know, plastic, and they have an NFC chip in them. And one of these too has my Ruby Friends profile encoded on it.
that's
So if you
awesome.
take an iPhone or an Android and just touch that card, it opens my profile. Like, and if you have the app installed, it opens the app. If you don't, it just goes to the web. So now all of a sudden we can start doing things that websites can't just do, and we can start writing NFC tags. And my long-term vision for this is that like a conference badge would have not just a QR code, but an NFC badge in it. And someone could just be like, boop, tap, I now know who you are. I can remember you, add a couple notes about you if I want to, and then maybe follow up with you in a few weeks. And that was like, okay, this is cool. And I just spent all of July building it and going all in on it and building both platforms and web and stuff. And here we are about a month later, and we have full feature parity across both platforms, iOS, Android, and on the web too.
That's incredible. Congratulations. I'm sure you have a lot of
Thanks.
green squares on GitHub for the past 30 days.
Yeah,
One of my questions was actually going to be if there was any potential for conferences to adopt this in the future, particularly within our ecosystem, obviously.
yeah,
I'd love to hear a little bit more about why this is so important from your perspective for our community specifically. We have a lot of folks,
yeah,
a lot of different conferences all over the world, and there's quite a bit of overlap, but not always. I feel like every time I go to an event, I'm always meeting a bunch of new people, expanding my circle of Ruby friends, if you will. Uh,
yeah.
and yeah, why build this for the Ruby community specifically? And also, I guess to add on to that, is it always going to be specifically for the Ruby community?
Yeah, great question. The Ruby community, this app I think could work in a lot of different communities. There's nothing Ruby specific about it except that it's talks about Ruby developers. Like I could copy and paste this code and make it a Python developers or a Java developers or whatever. But I knew that if I created something that was like developer friends dot app, like I don't have it doesn't have the same appeal as it being just for Ruby developers. And as something that I'm not a part of those communities. So how am I going to get this off the ground if I don't know a single Java developer or whatever? So by doing it just for Ruby developers, maybe to start, maybe forever, means that I already have a network to tap into to get folks excited about it, to get folks that they know already on the app, which I think is really important. And potentially the most important thing for me was like I can use it myself. like this app is it's so single player focused that you don't need anyone else to be in on Ruby Friends to use the app by yourself. You could just add a friend and type in their information and it's like a special Rolodex, right? But when you start to have the network effect of, oh, you're on Ruby Friends too, let me scan your QR code, let me get your contact information that way, it becomes this way of contacting and staying in touch with folks that goes deeper than just like maybe having a drink at a conference or maybe having 2 second conversation after a keynote or whatever. And those are the gaps that I always try to bridge that always feel so difficult. I have a couple of friends that I only see at conferences and I like forget about them in between conferences and that stinks. We see each other at the conference and it's, oh my God, I haven't spoke to you in 6 months because I forget. If this could just be a quick log of who I met and where, all of a sudden it becomes like a way to actually foster real relationships and not just the surface level ones that happen that might start at a conference. And then that's the real goal for this is folks like you who I met for the first time at RailsConf, right? I now have a note on you about what we talked about. And that's crazy because now I can look back on it and say, oh, we talked about this. That's my connection if I ever need to talk to you again. Or when I see you at Rails World, it's, oh, how is this thing going? I remember. And I don't ever want to create a personal CRM. Like there's no goal for it to go that far. But having a sentence or two about someone that you meet where you're meeting 50 people in 2 days can go a really long way in just like having each person stand out in their own unique way.
Absolutely. And you mentioned the 6 month gap
Yeah.
between events where you're not seeing particular people. And I feel like that's really interesting too when it comes to deepening connections that you make with people at conferences. Do you envision a sort of social feed in the future?
Yeah, I'm not sure where this will go next. I think that there's a lot of interesting ideas and opportunities, and there's also like the Ruby events
Mhm.
website where maybe these become more integrated with each other. Like, what if on Ruby Friends you could connect your Ruby events account and say, oh, I'm going to these events, or these are the events that I'm going to, or I met this person at this event, and it's like structured data, corporate Instagram type stuff where there's photo feeds of specific events that you took pictures of. But also, right now, it's very much like one-way friending. Like, I added you as my friend. That doesn't have to be accepted or anything like that. So maybe that actually becomes more of like a Facebook, like accepting friend requests and messaging, and then becomes more of a communication platform than really a just remembering. But one thing that I am definitely excited about is just like after you add someone for the first time, like 2 weeks later, hey, send them an email. Just if you want to go deeper with this person, like just send them an email, ask them about X because it has it in their profile. And if you want to You can ignore it or you can follow up with them. And I think that could be just a really good first step in, like I said, like making those connections deeper. And I think that's the route that Ruby Friends will take is more about the personal connections than the conference logging. Or I've been to this conference or I want to go to this conference. It's more about here's who I am and here are who the people that I talk to, like my people, essentially.
Yeah, I love that. And I do feel like it would be so useful to have something where if I'm meeting 50 different people in a day and there's one person where I'm like, oh, wow, this is such synergy that I want to build on. But it's so easy to forget that. Even
Oh
have
yeah.
a push notification or reminder, remind me in 8 days that I need to email so and so about this thing would be great because I feel like so many opportunities and connections will just slip through your mind in the black hole that is a
Totally.
conference
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah, being a consultant, where like going to conferences is marketing and outreach for me, right? As much as it is awesome to meet everyone and talk to everyone, at the end of the day, I have to justify paying my own ticket to fly there and stay and like food and all that stuff and not work during that. As I work, like my company isn't paying for it, I'm paying for it out of pocket. So I have to justify it. And a lot of the connections that I make end up either being clients or someone I could help or someone who I draw ideas from. And having a little record of that and being like, oh, yeah, I did meet those six people at dinner that night. And this is what we talked about. All of a sudden becomes like valuable to me as a consultant and as a contractor, even more so than it's like a business Rolodex, even more so than, oh yeah, we had drinks on the roof and we talked about their kids or whatever, which is great. But like I get two use cases out of it, which is fun.
I think that's fantastic. And yes, very relatable as well. Also,
Yeah,
being an independent consultant, having to pay your own way for conferences, you really have to extract as much value as you can and still have fun, obviously, because
exactly.
having tools like these would be so useful. And I love the idea of integration at some point with Ruby events. I think there's so much clear synergy and alignment. It
Hmm.
would be great to, when you meet someone, see previous conference talks they've
Yeah.
done and stuff like that and upcoming talks.
Yeah, thank you. There's the complete opposite direction is that this becomes Ruby Friends, but it becomes replace Ruby with another language. And I try to break into other markets.
Right.
And I think that is further away because there's no business model with this. It's all free. I'm just paying for the server out of pocket. But I think more importantly, like I would need someone to be boots on the ground for that to kick off that community kind of penetration, so to speak. And I just don't know if I care that much about other communities to do that
That's
yet.
fair.
If Ruby Friends all of a sudden is some profitable thing and I'm like making money off of it, like that's a different story. I can justify it, but for now it's this fun app that I get to experiment with, build Hotwire Native integrations for, and then use at conferences and see other people use.
That's
Wins all
going to be
around for me.
cool. Yeah, it's going to be really cool, I think, come Rails World when everyone's, hey, let me add you on Ruby
Yeah.
Friends. And suddenly your thing is everywhere. Not to mention you're going to be keynoting at Rails World, which is very exciting too.
Yeah, yeah, very exciting, very scary as
Of
well.
course. But that's really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And yeah, can I ask you actually one more kind
Of
of
course.
business-oriented question? And this is more even a point of personal curiosity. Have you done any market research into other events apps out there and found areas where you do or would want to differentiate?
Very little. The short of it was from talking to organizers at RailsConf actually, is that a lot of the event services do all in one, and badges are just one part of many other services. So they're almost like thrown on for free, practically. And to compete with that, Ruby Friends and the badges and all that stuff would have to be like really good. And I don't think that will ever be the case. So the way I'm looking at it is here are instructions on how to create your own QR code. Here's the NFC tag you should buy, and you can use the app to write your NFC tag, and boom, you just stick it on your badge.
Right.
And whatever conference you go to, you can just add your little Ruby Friends QR code. It'll be like branded, it'll have the NFC chip underneath it. I think that's probably where I would go first because just breaking into the market of conference software.
It's a big market, and I have not
Yeah.
done any research into this space
Yeah.
either. I've
Yeah.
used really bad apps at events when they have them, like
Yeah.
Bizaboo. or umbrella. I don't even know what they're
There's a
called.
lot of them. There's a
Yeah.
lot of them.
And they're never great experiences. And I
Hmm.
can't even put my finger on why exactly, but they're just
Yeah.
never good. I,
Yeah. So this was a mistake I learned from Rails devs, which is sadly shutting down on Friday. I never built like true multi-user account into it. So every profile on the site had one user associated with it. Every business had one user model. So I built Ruby Friends with the idea that a profile can be owned by multiple users and a user can belong to multiple profiles. And then there's also another entity that could live in there that isn't just a profile. So maybe that's a business, maybe that's an event organizer, maybe that's a sponsor, but it's all built that like those things can happen. And so if ever someone comes to me like wants to partner, it's okay, we have the infrastructure built out. I'm not making that mistake again because it took me 3 years to try and rewrite it, and I never actually did it for Rails dev, so I'm doing it now.
it's one of those things where you don't know the mistakes until you make the mistake. It's
Hmm.
always better the second time around.
Oh
So.
yeah, for
But
sure.
yeah, I need to download the Ruby Friends iOS app before Rails World. I've signed up on the web version and I think I need
Nice.
to fill out my profile a little bit more. And yeah, I can't wait to like really try it in the wild.
Yeah, yeah, I'll be curious to see how it works for you. And of course, any feature requests or ideas, let me know.
I think you might have too many of those by the end of that conference.
Yeah, yeah. My plan right now is to spend as much of August working on my keynote because that is like number one important to me right now. But I'm hoping to get a lot of good feedback at Rails World on the Ruby Friends experience and see where it can go and if it makes sense to switch direction or, like I said, other market or just keep adding on more CRM-like features or personal CRM-like features that make sense. See where it goes.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm sure there's plenty of collaborators out there in the ecosystem too. The Evil Martians come to mind. I know they're
Hmm.
working on an open source CFP type thing that they're using for SF Ruby conference. Who knows?
Yeah.
Between that and Ruby events, and I'm sure there's a ton of stuff out there. Could be really cool to see those kind of relationships and partnerships. And it's just overall, it's great seeing these things pop up to make the ecosystem more connected.
Yeah, I agree. I am curious to see if fast forward 5 years, is there one Ruby platform, one platform for Ruby, like all events, like everything event related? Or are we still separating like this is the social, this is the
Right.
planning, this is the organization and archival? I don't know what's best, but it'll be curious to see how this all pans out over the next probably 6 months.
And I'm sure you're going to have a lot of interesting conversations coming up next month.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool, Joe. Thank you so much for chatting. Really great conversation. And again, I can't say enough how excited I am for Ruby Friends. And I think it's such a value add for the community. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I'm excited to catch up again at Rails World.
Absolutely. I'll see you in Amsterdam.